Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This is Pastor Rosemary's Final Prophecy Watch. I'm Pastor Rosemary. Okay, now today there was a very tragic terrorist attack in Dhaka, Bangladesh, according to mainstream news, and they're reporting that secular individuals and organizations were attacked by what is thought to be radical Sunni groups or a radical Sunni group. Now, two extremist organizations that claim to be affiliated with Al-Qaeda and or ISIS or ISIL. These groups, they were said to have used explosives and guns and actual also machetes to take hostages and harm individuals in a restaurant. This was in Bangladesh. It was in a restaurant. They took hostages. And this is according to CNN and Fox News and Reuters. Now, it's been reported that extremist groups are competing, that various extremist groups are competing in sort of a bloody contest of terrorism. This attack happened in a restaurant in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and again, this attack included the taking of hostages and the use of explosive devices, guns, and even machetes to kill their intended victims. So this was a very bloody attack. It's interesting to note that although the date on the Islamic calendar is 9, which is the 9th month is Ramadan on the Islamic calendar, the 26th day, and the year on the Islamic calendar, 1437, equals 32 if you add it up for numerology, which equals the sacrificial number of 5 in Kabbalistic numerology, when the number 9 is considered that it's a reflective number. When you think about that and you use it in that context, we have the date equaling the number 23. So the number 23 is there, being reflected by the number 9. It might also be important to note that if you consider that the month of Ramadan could possibly, because it's the number 9, just like in other cultures there's other months that are the number 9, which could also have the same type of effect, that the qualities of reflecting one's reality back to them might come into play, since Ramadan is the 9th month of the Muslim calendars. But perhaps things are reflected, and perhaps in other cultures where they have a 9th month, perhaps things are reflected in that manner. And of course, for people in the Western countries, September is the 9th month. But if you look at the word September, it's a 7, and then you look at November. Nova, that's a 9. So it's put 2 places off, perhaps to keep it from being so reflective that no life could exist. So perhaps that's why things are offset. That might be the reason. That's probably the reason why some people use metric system and some people will use a system based on the number 12. Because if you don't have this kind of offset by the number 2, there's no wiggle room in reality, so it's probably a very important necessity. Now, in popular tarot, the Hierophant is number 5, and again, 5 is the number that is associated in Kabbalah with a sacrifice. And again, the Hierophant is represented in Kabbalah, which is like a pictorial representation of Kabbalah. Again, that's the number 5. The Hierophant is in the major arcana associated with any kind of leader, such as a patriarch or a pope or a pontiff. It's a religious leader, a spiritual or religious leader. And he grants blessings, tradition, and wisdom, sitting between the attributes of severe law and merciful freedom, thus balancing the two. Indeed, consider that this is often created out of a necessity by the polarity of the two. So the Hierophant is sort of created from the polarity of strict law and anarchistic freedom. That's where the pontiff or the patriarch or the pope or the hierophant comes from. He is patient, he's kind, and he seeks to serve God in his good stewardship of mankind, being mindful of how valuable our scriptures are, for not everyone has access to the Holy Bible. Consider the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 11. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, and I will send forth a famine into the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst of water, but of hearing the word of the Lord. So understand, that's the famine that is spoken of. So value and commit to memory the scriptures. Could the New World Order and the scientific, technocratic beast system take away your right to own and read a Bible? Or even take away your right to read a Bhagavad Gita or any of your religious texts in favor of purely scientific methods? It's possible, and that is why it's important to understand the Kabbalah and the scientific associations of the Kabbalah, because the Zohar is a very scientific text. Many of the things we're just now discovering in science have long been in the Zohar. So it's a very important book. And the Kabbalah is derived, it's the most important book in the study of Kabbalah. Along, other people, there's also various other references that one can look at, but it's a very important book and the most important book. And it's also important to read the Sefer Yetzirah. Now the reason the Kabbalah is important is because it bridges the gap, and the Zohar bridges the gap between religion and science. Again, what's the difference between science and magic? Really nothing. Now, for a moment, let's have a moment where we let us all keep the victims of this tragic attack that occurred in Bangladesh in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pastor Rosemary. This is Pastor Rosemary's Final Prophecy Watch. We'll see you next time. You stay frosty.